Hello, and welcome to Supply Chain Breakdown, the podcast where we explore the real world events shaping modern business and logistics. I'm your host, Nicole McLean, and I'm joined today by my colleagues Elizabeth Burton, Jake Holmes, and Zain Ali. Our conversation today is centered on a critical event detailed in an article from the Wall Street Journal. The piece was published on October 6th, 2025, and it's titled, A Devastating Fire at a Major Ford Supplier Will Disrupt Business for Months. This single fire has jeopardized the production of America's best-selling vehicle for over 40 years, the Ford F-150, and exposed the immense vulnerability hidden within our complex global supply chains. Over the next few minutes, we'll break down what happened, analyze the consequences, and connect it to the core business concepts we've been studying. Let's get started, Liz. Can you give us an overview of the situation?
Sure. On October 6, 2025, the Wall Street Journal reported that a fire that leveled part of a New York aluminum plant will have big impacts on the U.S. automotive industry supply chain and specifically the production of the popular Ford F-150 pickup truck. The plant located in Oswego, New York, produces over 40% of the aluminum sheet used by the U.S. automotive industry. The plant is owned by Novelis, which estimates the damage to the plant will keep their production offline until early 2026. This unplanned shutdown will have significant impacts for the supply chains that rely upon this aluminum. Other major customers of the plant include Toyota, Hyundai, Volkswagen, and Jeep. Ford is the main customer of the plant, and the Ford F-150 is one of the automotive industry's biggest users of aluminum. The success of the F-150 model is key to the success of the Ford brand itself, as it is the top-selling vehicle in the United States and it is Ford's main profit driver. When news of the plant's impact broke, Ford's stock sank 7%. However, Ford now reports that it has diversified its aluminum supply chain since switching the F-150's exterior from steel to aluminum over a decade ago. Ford indicates that they use several other aluminum suppliers in addition to Novelis. Further, Ford reports it is working closely with Novelis, assigning a full team of its own to identifying mitigation strategies and alternative sourcing to minimize the negative impact on Ford's bottom line. Toyota reports it is also working with alternative suppliers, with a spokesman sharing, "We're in pretty good shape, but not completely out of the woods." The automotive industry supply chains and operations have been experiencing numerous unexpected shocks of late, including the Trump administration's tariffs, semiconductor, and electrical vehicle material shortages. Since the COVID pandemic shutdowns deeply impacted the industry's supply chain several years ago, manufacturers have worked to build greater diversity and resiliency into their supply chains. However, the Wall Street Journal notes, though automakers and other major industrial manufacturers work to diversify their supply chains in the wake of the coronavirus pandemic, which shut off access to Chinese factories, companies often remain largely dependent on one or two makers for critical parts because of the high cost tied to employing multiple suppliers. This incident may also remind listeners of the impacts to global automotive supply chains caused by damage to factories in the 2011 Japanese tsunami, in which numerous component manufacturing plants suffered catastrophic damage, resulting in severe disruption to the automotive industry due to the common reliance on single source suppliers. Nicole McLean will now interview a few industry insiders to gain additional insights about this situation and the supply chain impacts. Nicole?
Thanks for breaking that down, Liz. The scale of this is clearly immense. Jake, I would like to turn to you first to connect some of the operational concepts we've discussed. This article mentions that Ford has a dedicated team working on this. From a supply chain management perspective, how do you think the Novelis plant being shut down will affect the supply chain for Ford and other companies who use them?
Thanks for the question, Nicole. This could majorly disturb the auto industry. Novelis supplies 40% of the aluminum used in automobiles. This will be a major issue for automobiles suppliers as they could soon start to run out of aluminum to build their vehicles. This means that companies will have a shortage of cars, meaning they will have to increase their prices, therefore making consumer purchase used or other manufacturers' cars to get cheaper prices. This is a big issue for Ford as they mainly use Novelis to supply the aluminum used in their vehicles. They will have to look for alternatives while the plant is being restored. If they do not have any backup suppliers, this will slow their production, leading to a shortage of vehicles. I believe this could cause a bullwhip effect. The companies who are hurt by this will have to order a lot to catch back up, and once everything is restored, they may end up getting an oversupply of aluminum.
That's a great point, Jake. Zane, I want to bring you in to discuss supply chain risk management. What plans, if any, did Ford have in place to help offset some of the disruptions that the fire caused?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Nicole. As Jake mentioned, Novelist supplies about 40% of the aluminum sheet used by the auto industry, with Ford being a major part of that. Ford currently has a full team dedicated to addressing the situation, and they have been working with Novelis directly since the fire last week. Ford has also started working with some of their other aluminum suppliers to see how they can help limit the disruptions. Novelis is a major supplier for Ford, but they also have a network of other suppliers that they can fall on in these situations. Novelis themselves are also working with industry competitors such as Arconic and Constellium to help provide more aluminum to the industry. I think this situation shows the importance of supply chain risk management, specifically finding that balance between efficiency and responsiveness. Novelis is a major supplier of aluminum for Ford, but they do not supply a large enough percentage for Ford to be unable to pivot and find solutions with other suppliers. I'm sure Ford has higher costs due to working with multiple suppliers. However, it has put them in a good position to deal with this fire. This situation also reminds me of the Ashmark case that we've been discussing the last few weeks. Ashmark was so reliant on Red Star as a supplier and did not have suitable contingency plans in place. So when they went bankrupt, Ashmark was left scrambling, trying to find solutions in their supply chain. So far, it seems like Ford have acted quickly to address the situation and are wasting no time working with other suppliers who also seem able to help in this situation.
That makes sense. And thank you for that contribution, Zane. I want to circle and pivot to the finances and how this could impact novelists. Now, as financial sustainability continues to be a growing issue for businesses, how could this affect the workers who are now out of work for a few months until the plant is up and running again? And also, how does an event like this impact a company's financial stability and its relationship with its stakeholders, such as investors? I'll go to you first on that, Jake.
Thanks, Nicole. That is a great question. Obviously, this is a huge problem for all the stakeholders involved with the novelist plan. The main stakeholders that I want to talk about are the workers who've invested their careers into working at Novelist. They are now out of a job for the foreseeable future. This means employees may not have the money to support their families. Hopefully, the plant will give them at least part of their paycheck while being a way to help support their families. If Novelist has other plants that they can use their workers at, then this would be the best solution. But until then, they may have to look for other work. If the employees at Novelist must find other work, then that causes shortage of employees when the plant is up and running again. This would cause the aluminum shortage that is about to happen to continue. The other main stakeholder I would like to talk about is the investors, as you brought up in your question. They are now scrambling to figure out how to get the factory open again so that they can become profitable once again. They should be trying to help get resources to get the plant open as quickly as possible. This will involve talking to the construction and manufacturing companies working on getting this open and seeing how fast they could revive the plant. As they say, time is money, and right now the investors are losing a lot of money by this plant being shut down. Thank you, Nicole.
That's crucial strategic insight. I'd like to pose a somewhat different question for you, Zane. I want to talk a little bit more about the global supply chain and the plant shutdown also affecting hundreds of workers. How has the global pandemic and the recent tariff war between the US and China affected Ford and the automobile industry?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Nicole. So, since the pandemic, a lot of companies have looked to bring production closer to their bases of operation through nearshoring and clustering. The automobile industry has realized the importance of this. However, they currently have a massive reliance on China for the rare earth metals that are used in electrical vehicles. Some companies started to diversify their supply chains following the pandemic, but they still end up being tied to one or two Chinese suppliers because of the high cost that comes with using others. Industries such as apparels and electronics have had an easier time shifting production away from China because of their basic material availability and the diversifying strategies that they use. However, the automobile industry has faced more challenges due to the setup costs that come with opening new manufacturing plants, as well as the complexities of moving from one existing manufacturer to another. I think the combination of the pandemic and the tariff situation has definitely shown a spotlight on the need to move away from Chinese producers. But because of some of the issues I just laid out, it has been a slower process than in other industries, and there's definitely still work to be done over the next 5 to 10 years to get them on the same page as other industries that have already started moving away from Chinese producers.
Wow, that was a lot to chew on, and I appreciate all of the insightful analysis and information. Thank you, Liz, for the overview, and Jake and Zane for your analysis. What began as a factory fire has unraveled into a crisis touching on operations, finance, strategy, and corporate ethics. It's a powerful reminder that our global economy is built on an intricate and sometimes fragile network. The disruption to the Ford F 150 is a clear example of how a single event can have a cascading set of consequences, impacting not just a company's bottom line, but the livelihoods of its workers and the health of a community. This story is far from over, and it serves as a critical case study on the need for building more resilient, transparent, and responsible supply chains, which we have been learning about this entire course load. Thanks for tuning in to Supply Chain Breakdown. We'll leave you now with a few questions to consider for our class discussion. Question one: beyond diversifying suppliers, what other proactive risk management strategies could companies like Ford implement to build more resilient supply chains against unforeseen black swan events like this fire? Question two: from a corporate social responsibility perspective, what specific actions should Novelis take to support its employees and the Oswego community during the months-long shutdown? What are the potential long-term benefits of investing in their workforce during the crisis? And question three: how might this event influence the trend of reshoring or bringing manufacturing and supply chains back to the United States? Do you believe the benefits of a more localized supply chain outweigh the potential cost increases for consumers? And with that, we ask that you come and join us on the Canvas group class chat to answer and support us in some of these questions. Thank you for tuning in today.